The tradition of the German Minnesanger hits full stride when we get to Walther von der Vogelweide. Sorry, German's a mouthful. We don't know very much at all about him biographically, but he is one of the primary figures in this culture of courtly poetry put into a German context, drawing on the troubadour and Provençal traditions. And adapting them into a more local idiom and a Germanic tongue. With him, with Walther, very much like Heinrich von Morungen, you get an emphasis on musicality. These are to be sung within a court. They are entertaining. They are inspiring in their own way, but often with a kind of sadness imbued in there. There is a great sense of idealism overshadowed almost, or idealism shadowed by realism, let's say. There's a sense of a yearning for magic in the world that is recognized as being unreal, but the dream itself makes the reality more acceptable, more tolerable. And you can see a lot of this going on in the short lyric "Dancing Girl," where there's a almost Arcadian conceit of dancing girls in a natural setting and the joy that comes from seeing pure beauty and the sudden recognition that, oh, it was only a dream. But what a dream it was, and how can that dream then imbue the rest of my worldly, often mundane and frustrating and painful and lonely existence. And it has such a sweet charm right from the very beginning. Lady, accept this garland. These were the words I spoke to a pretty girl. Then you will grace the dance with the lovely flowers crowning you. If I had priceless stones, they would be for your hair. Indeed, you must believe me by my faith. I mean it truly. She took my offering as a gently nurtured child would take it. Her cheeks became red as the rose that stands beside the lilies. Her shining eyes were lowered then in shame, yet she curtsied graciously. That was my reward. If any more becomes mine, I'll hold it secret. You are so fair that I want to give you my chaplet now, the very best I have. I know of many flowers, white and red, so far away on the heath over there, where they spring up beautiful, and where the birds are singing. Let us pluck them together there. I thought that never yet had I known such bliss as I knew then. From the tree the flowers rained on us endlessly as we lay in the grass. Yet, yes, as I filled with laughter and sheer joy, just then, when I was so gloriously rich in my dreaming, then day broke, and I was forced to wake. She has stirred me so that this summer with every girl I meet I must gaze deep in her eyes. Perhaps one will be mine. Then all my cares are gone. What if she were dancing here? Ladies, be so kind. Set your hats back a little. Oh, if only under a garland I could see that face. Kind of sweet. Very sweet, actually. There is a a sense of the fantasy about it, a sense of the otherworldliness about it, uh, from the very beginning. The emphasis in the very second line, these were the words. Whenever an author of anything references the words of something, or the writing of something, or the idea of language or writing comes up, the idea of art is introduced, that should send up a little warning flag that something is being played with in its artificiality, in its representation as art. It's not necessarily somebody being sincere. It is something that is art. And even at the end of that very first stanza, there's, indeed, you must believe me. Well, the implication might be that, well, of course, you're saying something, so why wouldn't I believe you? Well, that's part of the charm of it. It's telling you, the poem is telling you, the song is telling you, I might not be trustworthy. Something might be artificial about what I am saying. And of course, it does turn out to be a dream. He's having this little vision of a dancing girl and this great charm. And there is something almost erotic, troublingly so, in that second stanza. The eyes drop with shame because he, as the young lover, offers up the flowers to the young girl. There is a sexual connotation to that. There is something quite erotic in that, and the young girl blushes. She turns red like the rose. Yet there's also something sinister, something, again, fairly German. The insistence in the bottom of the first stanza of, wanting to be believed. Again, if you say something, it makes me think, well, why is he saying something? You must believe me. By my faith, I mean it truly. Does that suggest that this speaker is not trustworthy? And that comes back together in the in the next sentence, or in the next stanza, where you see the relationship is promised to be kept discreet. I'll hold it secret. But here he is singing a song about it. Is this something trustworthy? But trying to get the girl off alone. Let's go. I see so many flowers. I know them so far away, but on the heath over there. So it's not that far away if you can see it. So there's that question there. But he's also saying, well, why don't we go over there together? Let's get away together. This could be, a little questionable behavior for a young Lothario against a young girl. And that puts a different spin on the whole question of, going up in real life afterwards and saying, if only under a garden I could see that face. It's almost a little bit more leering there when you start to calculate that. That is an undeniable thread moving through this poem. Now, that is made trouble perhaps by the phrasing of a gently nurtured child. We're not sure how young this dancing girl is, so we're just going to assume that things are on the up and up here. Of course, in the Middle Ages, a girl who hit 13 is considered marriageable. So this is not that big of a stretch. But you got to get over that sometimes, because we might be a little bit sensitive to this these days, that in the past not so much so. That, well, it was perfectly normal. 13, yeah, wow, she's not married yet. What an old maid. And again and again, you see this natural imagery within the fantasy. The fantasy itself is built upon images of nature, which give it a grounding, which give it a little bit of substance. The idea of the flowers and it is sort of a fantasy land, but it's one that is springing up out of nature, and that itself is kind of Germanic. The fantasy aspects of nature go back to lots of folklore from the time that come down to us through a lot of fairy tales, quite frankly, where the woods are a place of wildness, we're a place of possibility, a place of some danger. Yeah, they can be awfully dark and scary, and you get a lot of wolves in the woods, but it's deeply connected with humanity and human passions, as opposed to civilization, which is so rational. As rational as it can get. But then you get through all of that, and then suddenly you realize, oh, it was a dream. Just then, when I was so gloriously rich in my dreaming, then day broke and I was forced to wake, and you suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute, it was a dream. That's what the Italians would call a volta, a turn, a sudden twist that, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. And now we can get a little perspective on everything that's come so far. So as the charm of that first part of the poem settles in, we're made to take a look at it and objectify it a little bit and recognize that it is all just fantasy. It's not real. But the use of that, the practicality of that, develops in that final stanza when it becomes about the individual's recognition that, well, okay, we all kind of need the fantasy from time to time. I dreamt it, but it's going to have a practical use for me. She has stirred me so that this summer, with every girl I meet, I must gaze deep in her eyes. So he is striving, the lover here, the singer, is striving to see that spark of magic, that image of perfect beauty, of idealism in every physical representation he can find on earth. So he has this idea in his head of this perfect girl, this dancing girl who so charmed him in his fantasy. And now he's going to go about looking for that in every girl he meets. He's looking for the beauty of the ideal in worldly reality. It's that's an act of faith. That's an act of certainly of Christian belief, but of multiple faiths around the world. The belief that the ideal shines through the actual. And he includes that charming little request that seems so humble. Ladies, be so kind, set your hats back a little. If only under a garland I could see that face. Just that simple hunger for inspiration, for beauty in a sometimes difficult, lonely world. He wants that sense of connection, sense of communion with something perfect, with something beautiful. There is a particular darkness about this, the idea that somebody is, well, this lonely and going about, hunting out something hungrily from lots of poor girls. I mean, that is an awful lot from the girl's perspective, to have the stranger walking up to them and staring them in the eye. Perhaps this is something that is particularly German also in the darkness of it, but you have to appreciate the focus on the humanity, the focus on the recognition that as human beings, we need to see glimpses of beauty from time to time. We can't really get on without it. And the idea that what comes to us in a dream can affect our reality and at least crack open our perspective enough so that we hunt it down. There is something inspiring in that. There's something ennobling in that. There's something kind of sad and pathetic in that. But all of that, the pathetic, the sad, the ennobling, and the inspiring, that is what it means to be human. And maybe that's what it means to be human in Northern Europe in the Middle Ages.